Imagine for a moment that the year is 1943 and the world is engulfed in the absolute chaos of World War II, where the United States military is desperately seeking a technological edge that could end the conflict overnight. Deep within the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, a project of such terrifying ambition was unfolding under the codename Project Rainbow, an endeavor whispered to have involved the greatest minds of the century, including Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla. The goal was simple yet scientifically impossible by every known metric of the era: to render a massive destroyer escort, the USS Eldridge, completely invisible to enemy radar by manipulating the very fabric of space and time through intense electromagnetic fields. This was not merely a mission of stealth but an attempt to unlock the unified field theory, a bridge between gravity and electromagnetism that promised a power so absolute it bordered on the divine or the demonic, depending on which side of the hull you were standing on during that fateful summer morning. As the massive generators began to hum deep within the steel bowels of the Eldridge, a strange, greenish-colored fog began to envelop the ship, a mist so thick and unnatural that witnesses described it as a glowing shroud that seemed to vibrate with a low, bone-chilling frequency. According to the accounts that have leaked through the cracks of government classification over the decades, the air grew heavy with ozone and the smell of ionized static as the ship didn't just disappear from radar screens, but vanished entirely from the visual spectrum, leaving only a hollow depression in the water where thousands of tons of steel had sat moments before. This was the moment the Philadelphia experiment allegedly crossed the threshold from advanced physics into the realm of pure nightmare, for as the ship vanished from the Philadelphia docks, it was reportedly seen hundreds of miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, appearing like a ghost ship in the harbor for several minutes before flickering back out of existence only to reappear once more in Pennsylvania. However, the true horror of Project Rainbow was not the teleportation itself but the physiological and psychological price paid by the men who were on board that vessel during its transit through the void. When the Eldridge finally rematerialized and the green mist dissipated, the scene on deck was something out of a cosmic horror novel, as the crew members were found in states of absolute agony and biological impossibility. Some sailors were seen wandering the deck in a state of total mental collapse, their minds shattered by the experience of seeing things that human eyes were never meant to perceive in the dimensions between our world. Even more terrifying were the reports of men who had become physically fused into the steel structure of the ship itself, their limbs and torsos intermingled with the metal bulkheads as if the molecules of the human body and the molecules of the ship had forgotten their boundaries during the phase shift and solidified back together in a grotesque, permanent embrace. The aftermath of the experiment was characterized by an immediate and absolute cover-up, with the survivors being discharged under mysterious circumstances or confined to psychiatric wards where their stories could be dismissed as the delusions of broken men. The official naval record states that the USS Eldridge was never even in Philadelphia during that window of time and that the entire story is the fabrication of a man named Carl Meredith Allen, also known as Carlos Allende, who sent a series of cryptic letters to Dr. Morris Jessup detailing the horrors he had witnessed from a nearby merchant vessel. Yet, despite the official denials, the legend of the Philadelphia experiment refuses to die because it touches on a primal fear that the government has access to technologies that can bypass the laws of physics, and that in the pursuit of power, human lives are treated as nothing more than disposable components in a larger, darker machine of secret science. If we look deeper into the scientific theories of the time, we find that the unified field theory was Einstein's ultimate pursuit, a way to explain how all forces in the universe interact. And if the Navy had indeed found a way to apply these theories to naval warfare, the implications would be staggering. The idea was to create a massive electromagnetic bottle around the ship, bending light and radar waves around the vessel like water flowing around a stone in a stream, but something went wrong when the intensity of the field reached a critical mass. It is theorized that the experiment accidentally opened a rift in the space-time continuum, dragging the ship into a non-Euclidean space where time does not flow linearly and where the physical laws of our three-dimensional reality are suspended. For those few minutes, the crew of the Eldridge were not just invisible, they were outside of time itself, experiencing a sensory overload that rewrote their DNA and fused their souls to the machinery they were meant to operate. Decades later, the connection between the Philadelphia experiment and the later rumors of the Montauk Project began to surface, suggesting that the research didn't stop in 1943 but was merely moved to underground bunkers where it evolved into experiments regarding time travel and mind control. Researchers who have spent their lives hunting for the truth point to the strange disappearances of sailors who were reportedly seen freezing or fading in and out of visibility in public places years after the war ended, as if their bodies were still stuck in the electromagnetic resonance of that day. This phenomenon, known as the freeze, involved men who would suddenly stop moving and become unable to speak or be touched, remaining locked in a state of suspended animation for hours or days until someone performed a laying on of hands to pull them back into our reality, a lingering side effect of a project that fundamentally altered their connection to the material world. While skeptics argue that the technology of the 1940s was far too primitive for such a feat, we must remember that the Manhattan Project was also happening in secret at the same time, proving that when the government is at war, the impossible becomes a matter of national security. The Philadelphia experiment remains the ultimate ghost story of the atomic age, a cautionary tale about the dangers of playing God with the fundamental forces of nature without understanding the consequences. Whether it was a literal teleportation of a warship or a series of high-voltage tests that went catastrophically wrong, the legacy of the USS Eldridge continues to haunt the corridors of the Pentagon and the imaginations of those who believe that the history we are taught in schools is only a thin veil over a much more complex and terrifying reality. As we stare into the deep waters of the Atlantic, we have to ask ourselves, is the ship truly gone, or is it still out there, vibrating in a frequency just beyond our sight, waiting for the generators to hum once again?